So it looks like today's one of those days I've got to play the workability game. So today's one of those days that's kind of got me down. I don't know, I said this at the very beginning of my 12-week challenge. And I'm now in the second day of my 5th week. And I have accomplished a certain amount of, you know, totally gone. Totally gone. Just wiped out my mind right now. So what I was trying to say is that I've accomplished a certain amount of work on the way. I've managed to produce a certain amount of content for my 12-week, my online program. Totally blank today. Have you noticed? I mean, like, it's just gone. I don't know what it is. Sometimes that mind just gets overwhelmed. I've accomplished quite a lot over the last 4 or 5 weeks, but I get those times where things just freeze up and I get the pit in the stomach and I wonder, wow, what is this? But what I've noticed with my creative writing that I've been doing, that exercise that I spoke about last week, is that this is not new. This is something I remember from childhood, that on one hand I get stuck sometimes. On the other hand, I have a lot of courage and I just manage to keep going. And so using today's book by my good friend Patricia Zarita Ona, otherwise known as Dr. Z, she talks about this idea of being paralyzed and overwhelmed of things that go on inside us. And I definitely recognize that. But a comforting thing that she says also in her book, and she talks about this workability game. Now, workability is something that's not new in acceptance and commitment therapy or acceptance and commitment training, but she calls it the workability game, and I quite like that idea. And one of the things that she brings out is, to quote, ditch other people's definitions of success, accomplishment and well-being to pursue your own. And I really love that, because one of the things that I found that we all do is we're all searching for a label. We're all searching for that "what's wrong with me" name, right? And we go to great lengths looking for that, whether it's going to the doctor or whether it's searching Google, looking for that name that we can call ourselves that finally gives us that relief. Wow, I've actually found out that there is something wrong with me. And there's a lot of people who take great pleasure in that and great relief in that, so that they can now pursue the solution to that problem that they've discovered from the point of view of a name. Now, if that helps you and that's workable, then fair enough. But I find that that search for the name is something that, might not necessarily serve us if we continue to think that there's something wrong with us, rather than, as she puts it, pursue our own goals. In other words, maybe the way that we work is just the way that we work. Maybe this is just me, right? And if I've come this far, then something's working. And maybe that something that's working is my strengths, and I should play to my strengths. Not all of us are equal. Not all of us are the same. Some have strengths in one area and some have strengths in the other. And yes, we can strengthen bits that are not so strong in our abilities, and that's a good thing. But we don't need necessarily names in order to do that. So as I examine myself, when I get into this stuck position, it is comforting to remember that I am my own person, and my success is what I define it to be. And it's not about a number in a bank or as many online courses as somebody else, or indeed an online course at all. But if it's something that I feel is important, then my measurement for success is regarding myself and not comparing myself to others. And so what I'm going to do is take comfort in that for today and say, you know what, this kind of paralysis that goes on in me, maybe that's actually a good thing. Maybe there's some sort of creative process that's going on that kind of pulls me to a stop, and then boom, I get a splurge of energy. Who knows? Maybe that's an option, and maybe it's not an option. But what I'm doing is constantly producing in my own way. And I think of all the great artists. I was talking to someone the other day, and I was thinking, well, if I was to paint oils or whatever, like Picasso did before there was Picasso, if I was Picasso, right, and I was painting those paintings, I would probably look at them and go, oh my goodness, I'm totally awful as an artist. And I'm positive I was. I mean, I remember the first time somebody said, oh, your son is a perfectionist. And I must have been about 7 years old, and created this piece of artwork at an arts and crafts class. And everyone was saying, oh, that's fantastic, that's great. And I looked at it and I thought, that's just a piece of rubbish. And I imagine that I would probably say that if I did a painting and it came out like a Picasso painting. I'd be like, I don't even know how to paint. So I look at myself now and I think, you know what? Maybe that's just my art. This is just me, and I'm an original, and I will be what I will be, and I will create what I can create. So I'm going to leave you with that today and see if that maybe even resonates with you in your challenge, if you're doing one, or just your daily life, your work that you produce. Sometimes it's really, really frustrating. See you tomorrow.
Dov Benyaacov-Kurtzman has embarked on a 12-week daily life challenge to disseminate a mixture of knowledge, combining his hand-picked golden nuggets from his personal library together with his decades of experience and learning. He is doing this as a committed action to service his values of contributing and helping others, using himself as the subject of this exercise. Despite his feelings of awkwardness, anxiousness, and shame, which usually forms a barrier of uncomfortableness within, holding him back from accomplishing his goals. Dov Benyaacov-Kurtzman is an accomplished psychotherapist and clinical social worker with many years of learning and experience. And yet his self-disclosure of his vulnerability and openness is to demonstrate the human condition that we all experience from time to time. Disclaimer: the contents of this podcast, such as text, graphics, images, and other material contained on the podcast, are for informational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your mental health professional or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding your condition. Never disregard professional advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard on this podcast.